Professor Richard Larson's career has focused his operations research and systems expertise on a wide variety of problems in both public and private sectors. He is author, co-author of editor of 6 books, and author or co-author of over 175 scientific articles, primarily in the fields of urban service systems, especially emergency response systems, disaster planning, pandemics, queuing, logistics, technology enabled education, smart energy houses, and workforce planning. His first book, Urban Police Patrol Analysis, that is from MIT Press 1972, was awarded the Lanchester Prize of the Operations Research Society of America. He is co-author with the Emidio Odoni of the widely used Urban Operations Research, Prentice Hall 1981, over 1,000 citations. Professor Larson's research on queues has not only resulted in new computational techniques, example, the Q inference engine, an early example of data-driven research, and the hypercube queuing model 740 citations, but has also been covered extensively in national and international media. Two recent papers co-authored with his students have won Best Paper of the Year awards, modeling the effects of H1N1 influenza vaccine distribution in the US. And next one, Value in Health 2012, and the STEM Crisis or STEM Surplus. Professor Larson served as president of ORSA, Operations Research Society of America 1993 to 94, and he is a past president of Informs 2005, Institute for Operations Research and the Management Sciences. Professor Larson served as co-director of the MIT Operations Research Center over 15 years. Please join me in welcoming our plenary speaker, Professor Richard Larson. Professor Richard, are you there? Hello. Am I audible?
You are on mute.
Hello, Professor Richard.
There we go. Now can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. So yeah, the MIT system is not allowing me to share and to change these slides myself. So every time I want a slide changed, I'll go boop like this. Okay. And Kiram, thank you for helping me with this. So today we're talking about model thinking for everyday life. And during the COVID 2-year lockdown, I actually wrote the book, Model Thinking for Everyday Life. It's published by Informs, and it's available on Amazon. And here the word model is an adjective meaning two things. Model meaning exemplary thinking, thinking to be emulated, and model meaning conceptual, so and sometimes mathematical. So model thinking means both things. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Can we move to the next slide? How do I do this?
1 minute. 1 minute, please.
Yes.
Now. 1 minute.
We'll assist you.
Yeah, I'd like to move to, I need somebody to help me move through the slides.
Yeah, Professor Richard. Now yeah, is it okay now?
Yeah, oh, that's good. Okay, good. So every time I go like this, there's the model thinking for everyday life, meaning we want to change the slide. Boop. Change the slide. New slide.
New slide. Next.
And the publisher is Informs. And so I'm saying hello and to the international webinar on AI, big data, and machine learning.
Next.
So I'm here at my home in Lexington, Massachusetts, the home of the American Revolution. And the first shots were fired against the British less than a mile from where I'm sitting right now at my house. So and there's the Minuteman statue, which is very close to my house. Thank you. I think this is working. So that's not a view from today. That's a view from 2 months ago, what my backyard looked like. Okay. So about the book, what others are saying about the book, uh, filled with surprising insights about the hazards, ordeals, and pleasures of everyday life, revelations that seem perfectly intuitive after Larson has explained them. That's Steven Pinker. You might have heard of him. He's quite famous at Harvard University. And Mark Daskin, who's very active in the operations research area. Like the book, it should be required reading, he says, for any undergraduate course in operations research. And Michael Horn also says some nice things about the book. And I'll let you read that. You can read it faster than I can read it to you. And Sanjay Sarma, a very famous fellow, also has some nice things to say about the book. So, a word on research versus practice, and I view myself as a practitioner first and as an academic second. And so, to me, operations research, which means research on operations, no pun intended, but that's serious. You're actually going out and looking at things in the real world in which we live. That's research on operations. And my entire career has incorporated both. So I'm neither a theoretician nor a practitioner. I join the two. The two are joined at the hip. Okay, so basically, in many logistical systems, you can speed service by deliberately inserting delays. I'm having some things here which are mind benders. In many logistical systems, you can speed and choosing the locations of wind turbines. The location with the highest average wind speed is not necessarily the one that will produce the most electricity. That's a mind twister. Of two baseball players, Tom and Dick, Tom maybe have the higher batted average in each of two successive seasons, but when the two seasons are combined into one, Dick has the higher batted average. Boy, that's a real mind bender. There's a hidden variable in there, and the hidden variable is the number of games that each have played. Simply moving chronically ill patients from one group to the next can increase the life expectancies of both groups. Can you believe that? You have two wards in the hospital, and Ward A and Ward B, and you move some people from Ward A to Ward B. If the injury and the sickness profiles of the two things are appropriately different, you can increase the life expectancies of both groups by doing that shift, and yet there's been no medical intervention. In most service systems where there's queuing, people have to wait for service. The duration of the wait is usually not the most important thing about customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I say is in the book, I say the answer is not the answer. It's the process is the answer. The process of thinking, critical thinking skills. So what I try to do in the book is I try to present the way of thinking about life and the world in which we live from a critical thinking skill point of view. And I wrote it not for other academics. I wrote it for the general population. So it's written in a very friendly way and interactive. It's an interactive book. Every 3 or 4 pages, I ask the reader to take out a sharpened pencil and some blank pieces of paper and jot out and answer some questions that I asked them based on the previous 3 or 4 days of 3 or 4 pages of reading that they've gone through. Let's skip this instructive allegory. I don't think we have time for that. Okay. So any day I don't learn something new is a wasted day. B.B. King is one of many people who said that. I think it's also attributed to Albert Einstein. You may have heard of him. So every day we try to learn something new. Otherwise, it's a wasted day. So we get out the sharpened pencils and we get the blank pieces of paper. And so the book with active pencil and paper, no computer, it requires the reader to immerse themselves in various kinds of problems and to see the world around them in terms of models. You know, when I wrote the book, I made an assertion that the best learning occurs from pencil and paper, not from computer-based learning. But I made that assertion without references. Since I wrote the book 3 years ago, the research has shown that my assertion is correct. That the best thing for the brain to understand something and remember it is for you to work it out on pencil and paper. Okay, so here we go. We have a rainy day. We're in a car, and Mom, how come it always rains faster when you drive faster? You might say, well, why does she say that? Well, she says that because as Mom is driving faster, she has to speed up the windshield wipers on the front of the car so she can see clearly. But okay, so we have to think about this. We have to think about this, and we might have to scribble some things down. Use many sharpened pencils. Think about this, and think about it some more. And then, so in the book, we have a discussion that Mom has with her daughter, which I call discovery learning. And even if Mom knows the answer to the daughter's question, Mom orchestrates a conversation with the daughter so that the conversation evolves in such a way that they discover the answer. They discover the answer themselves in that discovery learning discussion. So this is a key teaching and learning method. And we can thank Benjamin Franklin for making this widely known. By the way, the book's appendix has a full mathematical treatment of raindrops hitting the windshield of a car, but we don't need that in the major text of the book. So Ben Franklin, tell me and I forget, and I guess I'm a little bit guilty of this today. I'm sorry. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. That's Benjamin Franklin. So there's a Model T Ford. And first of all, if you look at that, you can see the origin of the name windshield. Windshield. It's a shield from the wind. And then the Model T Ford, the windshield was perfectly vertical. So it's a special case of the raindrop problem. So any raindrops, if there's no wind, if the rain's falling straight down, if there's no wind, the only raindrops that will fall on that windshield are due to the forward motion of the car. And the faster the car, the more of the raindrops. So the raindrops are go that way. In the appendix of the book, we actually go into sloped windshields and some more mathematics. Okay. Oh, flaws of averages. So you've heard of laws of averages. Oh, yeah. Let's go back. Yeah. Let's go to flaws of averages. That's the news from Lakewood. Why are we doing this? That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. Garrison Keillor used to have a radio program, and that was one of his famous sayings every week during the radio program. And you smile about that, and you say, well, it's impossible for all the children to be above average, right? Well, not if you think about it. Lake Wobegon may be a very intelligent place, and compared to every other places in the state, it's possible that the children of Lake Wobegon are above average, all of them, compared to the average of the state. So the average bus inter-arrival time, you might ask, is that a good service level indicator? Well, let's say this. For instance, we say, well, maybe the average bus inter-arrival time is 10 minutes. So maybe on average in Boston, Massachusetts, on a certain bus route, the buses arrive on average during the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour of once every 10 minutes. So you might think, if I arrive at a random time and they arrive every 10 minutes on average, then maybe maybe on average I show up in the middle of that gap, and maybe I should expect to wait for 5 minutes. Well, that's one way of thinking about it. But then we think about the dynamics of buses in urban environments. And what happens if a bus is going down the route and all of a sudden maybe there are more people getting on than anticipated, or more people getting off than anticipated. So that bus is delayed maybe 30 seconds or a minute compared to its anticipated schedule. And as a result of that, the next stop that it goes to, it's going to be delayed even further because there's been a bigger gap. Meanwhile, the bus behind it, the bus immediately behind it, when it gets to the next stop, sees fewer people than anticipated, so it'll speed up. So eventually, the natural process in urban environments of buses is bus clumping in pairs, and then even higher order clumping. And so the bus delay is not only dependent on the average bus inter-arrival time. So one can think of this as parachuting onto the time axis. So there, you're parachuting onto the time axis. And so let's say as a conceptual concept that the buses show up with a 20-minute gap, and then following that, there's a 2-minute gap. Then there's a 20-minute gap, and there's a 2-minute gap. So you might think that the average gap is, let's say, 22 divided by 10, 11. So you might say maybe the average waiting time is 5.5. Okay, so that you might think that, and but guess what? That's wrong. That's a wrong kind of thinking, because when you parachute onto the time axis, you have a probability of 20 seconds of showing up in the 20-minute gap, in which case your average time of delay is 10 minutes, and you have a very small probability, 20 seconds, of showing up in the short gap. And so actually the average wait for the next bus is 9.18 minutes, not the 5.5 minutes, which the incorrect thinking got us. So there's an example of model thinking. Okay, so let's think of another example. Shocker, half of all marriages end in divorce. A true statement. Let's go to the next daily news. Good news today. Only 1 in current marriages will end in divorce. Both of these statements are true. 1 in 8 current marriages will end in divorce, but 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So there's another mind bender. And to sort this out in your head, you have to do some nice model thinking to straighten out your thought processes. Queuing. I'm an operations researcher, and if you do a Google search and you type in Dr. Q, my name shows up immediately. So my nickname is Dr. Q, and so I've been a Q, fascinated with Qs for decades. And A.K. Erlang, a Danish telephone engineer in 1919, that's more than 100 years ago, he invented queuing theory. I like queuing. I like the word queuing with a second e in it because it has five vowels in a row, and there aren't that many English language words that have five vowels in a row. So let's look at Q Erlang. We see that in various TV programs like Saturday Night Live and Laugh-In, there's Lily Tomlin, Ernestine, uh, 1950s telephone operator, and she was funny. Okay. And but now we have the emergency number 911, which is implemented widely throughout the United States. And it used to be, for instance, in New York City, if you had an emergency to call, it depended on what kind of call. So police, fire, and ambulance each had their own number. And also each of the boroughs had their own number. And Brooklyn had two different numbers, was divided in two. And there was Manhattan North and Manhattan South. So there were over 20 different phone numbers you had to know in New York City if you had an emergency. And this was reduced to just a three-digit number, which is now what they call the universal emergency number. So you can apply queuing theory to here. There's more model thinking, and it shows that as the busyness of the area goes of the queue goes from 0 to 100%, you reach what I call the wall of death. And the wall of death is when you get close to 100% busyness on the part of the servers. The queue is very, very large. Uh, the yellow line, which shows a more delayed increase, is when you have 10 servers, whereas the first one is just for a single server. So New York City's 911 system, which as a graduate student, I spent some serious time there trying to help them out because there were letters to the editor of the New York Times and other newspapers saying, I called the mayor's 911 system last Saturday night and it rang for 28 minutes with no answer. So I thought maybe I had the wrong number. I called again and it rang for 25 minutes. And then somebody said, police emergency, may I help you? So I went down there and worked with two lieutenants, and we looked through. We got data, and we looked through the order of magnitude change in hourly call rates, and yet there's only a factor of two change in the way they operate, the way they allocated their scheduled operators at that time. So basically, I worked with these two lieutenants. They did training, and I did mathematics. I applied Erlang's queuing equations and came up with a new process for scheduling the operators. And when that was presented to the police commissioner about 2 weeks later, first of all, he didn't believe me because his subordinates were telling him that there were no problems with queuing delays in 911. And the letters to the editor were telling lies. But the two lieutenants were there in the presentation with me. And he said, sir, everything that Mr. Larson is saying is true. And so he implemented everything that we proposed from the Erlang's models in 7 days' time, the fastest implementation I've ever had. One more thing with queuing, I created something called the hypercube queuing model, which is now I think the gold standard in modeling ambulance and police response in spatially distributed areas. And here's an example of the hypercube queuing model applied to New York City, and it shows the response pattern for an ambulance, which is in the lower right-hand corner, and the radii of those blue curves, those blue lollipops, are proportional to the frequency of dispatches which send that unit from its home location to that particular location. And the hypercube queuing model was the first one that ever had the spatially integrated the spatial distribution of calls for service and the spatial distribution of the servers. So critical thinking, our focus is on informed critical thinking. And We're swayed by facts, not emotions, not politics or group dynamics. And a critical thinker is aware of the pitfalls of human intuition because often our intuition is wrong. I've given you some examples today where our intuition was wrong before we applied our model thinking to it. And so this is the I think that my lesson for today is to become a model thinker. And if you go through life and you think of it that way, you even think about groceries and your dog food as an inventory depletion system. You go to you drive in a car and you stop at a red light, and you can play a game with yourself, saying, "Well, how much is the residual delay until it turns green again?" And it's interesting. It's what a queue at a traffic light is one of the few queues where the longer it is when you show up, the less time you'll have to wait in the queue. Most queues, the longer the queue is, means the longer you'll be in the queue. But at traffic lights, if you think about it, if there are 3 or 4 cars waiting there at the red light when you arrive, that means that the majority of the red-green cycle has already gone through. So you won't have to wait very long at all. So you can play these kinds of games. And a life example is here's the Fram oil filter. This goes way back, I think, to the 60s when it said, you can pay me now or pay me later. You know, replace the oil filter. At that time, I think it was for $6, or you replace your engine for thousands of dollars. And so that's the deferred maintenance. And we have the last chapter of the book, we have a discussion of deferred maintenance. And so deferred maintenance, it's much more common than you think. Your car probably has deferred maintenance. Your house, for instance, my chimney, I have to get it, I better get it inspected quickly because I haven't had it inspected for a couple of years. Fire alarms with fire extinguishers, you want to make sure the fire extinguishers are still working. Yourself, you don't want to have deferred maintenance on yourself. And I used to say my retirement from MIT, but I actually have now retired from MIT. MIT itself, you know, was my home for 5 decades, admits to deferred maintenance on its campus of $1 billion. $1 billion. And so there's a lot of deferred maintenance around. And unfortunately, major incidents can happen, dangerous incidents can happen because of that deferred maintenance. You've seen headlines where bridges will fall down and the people who are in cars on the bridges die as a result. So deferred maintenance is a major problem. So I asked myself about 10 years ago when I had gone beyond the retirement age of 65, what are you waiting for? So I invented something called professor post tenure, and the professor post tenure is allows one like me to stay involved with MIT and still interact with students and teach if I want to, but it removes me from the tenure roles. So it opens up a slot for a 28 or 29-year-old assistant professor to join the tenure track, and so that's what I did. So thank you very much. That's all, folks. Any questions? No questions.
Dr. Dana,
I'm finished.
Dr. Dana, you are on mute?
I unmuted. Thank you for the most delightful presentation. As a professor myself from New York University, I relate completely, and also was funny that you say that the land from the men are good looking and women are strong, because I always say whenever I do something strong that I am from land when women are strong and men are good looking and children are above average. But you know, one before was related to Greece, women from Greece before taken to the lake. And I enjoy your talk, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Send the link in the chat where people can buy your book. Send the link in the chat so our colleagues can buy your book, and also we can put your book on our LinkedIn, and we can put your book on the website of the European Medical Laser Association. So to try to sell your book, where can we buy your book?
Thank you. Thank you. Right now, the only place to buy the book that I know of is Amazon. You go on the Amazon
Send the
website.
link. Send the link in the chat of the conference. Send the link. You must put the link in the chat of the conference.
Oh, okay.
Or
Okay.
give it to Kiran so he puts it in the chat of the conference.
Okay,
I
Dr.
will do
Kiya.
that. I will do that. Thank
Yes,
you.
please do. Any questions, anybody? Everybody? If not, please let's go to the next speaker.